the whole international community is faced with. Issues like climate change, terrorism, disease, natural disasters, financial instability, all these things. No country can handle these issues all by itself. We need international cooperation, especially maybe cooperation between China and the United States.
Ambassador Cui Tiankai, thank you very much for giving your time today here in Washington, D.C. to share some of your thoughts on a world that continues to change. One of the changes is, of course, the Phase 1 trade agreement between China and the United States. Unpack that for us. What exactly does it represent, and what change will it introduce to the world?
Well, first of all, welcome to Washington, D.C. at the beginning of the new year. So let me wish you and your team a very happy new year.
Thank you.
We just concluded what people call the Phase 1 trade agreement between China and the United States. I think it's a good example that despite all the differences between our two countries, there's still a clear need and a growing common interest for the two countries to reach agreement on important issues like trade and others.
When you look at this Phase 1, when you say Phase 1, does that necessarily indicate that there's going to be a Phase 2, maybe a Phase 3?
I think actually this is a continuous process because we have a huge volume of bilateral trade between China and the United States and growing mutual investment. So there are always maybe issues we have to address, concerns we have to raise. So people have to talk to each other, to have ongoing consultations on all these issues related to bilateral trade. So, of course, we are now talking about Phase 1. Naturally, there might be Phase 2 or Phase 3, but whatever you may call them, the need for continuing consultation is clearly there.
You use some interesting words and phrases there. Talk to each other, consultation. Is it easier 2 years after the dispute began to talk to one another?
Maybe good things are never easy in the world.
Yes.
There's a saying in the English language, easy come, easy go. Yeah. I think to be frank, the trade talks was quite tough sometimes, but there is a good commitment by both sides to overcome the difficulties, to continue their coordination and consultation to reach some concrete outcome, and they did it. So it seemed to me there's still a good degree of common sense out there.
And then, therefore, what happens next? As you said, perhaps whether it's called Phase 2 or 3 is not significant in itself, but perhaps more significant is what will follow after Phase 1 and what can people all over the world perhaps anticipate and prepare themselves for?
I think the first thing we have to do, and China and the United States, we have to do together, is to implement this Phase 1 agreement, to show to the world that we have good faith in this, and we are ready to materialize whatever we have agreed on paper. This is the first and the most important thing we have to do together right now.
When you look at this Phase 1, what is perhaps the most valuable component? Because the US-China relationship surely impacts people all over the world, not only in these two countries. And when we think about the communities, the farmers, for example, the individuals who are involved, the suppliers, the producers, the manufacturers, what should they look at amongst this more than 100-page text and say, that's important to us?
You see, there are altogether 9 chapters in the agreement, and there are a lot of specific, even technical issues involved. So I think the government agencies in both countries that are dealing with these issues on a daily basis, they are in a much better position to present and explain this to the public. But I believe what is the most important thing behind this agreement, maybe not everybody is fully aware of this, is the underlying principle of solving any problems between us through dialogue and consultation on the basis of equality and mutual respect. I think that this is the most important thing.
That's interesting because these negotiations and this phase one is a result of 2 years which began with a disagreement of some sort. Do you think 2 years on that not only you have a phase one agreement to show for, but perhaps a more honest relationship, a different kind of positive relationship between the two countries?
Actually, if we look at the past history, you see China and the United States established diplomatic relations in 1979. So last year was the 40th anniversary. If you look at the past history, it's clear there was a kind of, if we may use the term, decoupling between the two countries for 22 years before Dr. Henry Kissinger's secret visit. Then we resumed ties. We built a very strong and growing relationship over the decades. I think we should really draw the good lessons from the past. I think history has proved cooperation is the only option for our two countries. When we cooperate, both countries would benefit from it, and confrontation will make both countries hurt, very badly hurt. We should bear this in mind as we move forward.
You mentioned the wider China-United States bilateral relationship. Many people have said that this trade agreement is surely not going to be solved, but as you said back in 1972 when Dr. Kissinger went to China, followed by President Richard Nixon, that what they achieved, and of course Jimmy Carter in 1979 with Deng Xiaoping, was surely even more impossible at the time than any trade agreement today. When you look back to 72, 78, 79, and the forming of that relationship into what it is today, there wasn't even an embassy here in Washington at the time. Surely that was more difficult.
We started with a liaison office
Yes.
in the Mayflower Hotel.
What year was that?
I think 73. So I think we have done a great deal over the last few decades for our relationship. And there's clear need for us to continue in the same direction.
I have to ask you, though, why is the US-China relationship so important as the Chinese ambassador? I've always said that it impacts humanity. But in your words and with your insight, what should people around the world think about in terms of the critical aspect of this relationship between these two families of people?
Well, you see, China and the United States, we are the two largest economies in the world. We are both permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. So we bear great responsibilities, not only for our own peoples, but also for the global community. At the same time, there are a growing number of challenges, global challenges, the whole international community is faced with. Issues like climate change, terrorism, disease, natural disasters, financial instability, all these things. No country can handle these issues all by itself. We need international cooperation, especially maybe cooperation between China and the United States. So this phase one agreement is giving people better confidence, not only for the global economic prospects, but also for the possibility of major countries cooperating with each other on global issues.